I'm Annalisa Burgos at the RTDNA convention, and we just got out of an amazing opening session on covering the earthquake in Haiti. We heard from some great panelists, starting with Jonathan Katz, who's a correspondent with the Associated Press. He actually lives and works in Port-au-Prince and was there during the earthquake, so he told us an amazing story about how he survived it and then went around and covered it. We also heard from Robert Hurst, president of CTV News, and he talked about, from a management point of view, how do you finance this type of coverage on a large scale? I mean, it's a major natural disaster, and so he talked about covering this kind of event in a recession. We also heard from Carrie Kahn, who's a correspondent at NPR, and she talked about getting there and not really knowing anyone, so she latched on to some fellow journalists to get the stories that she needed to get for her organization. We also heard from Dr. Mona Khanna, who's a medical journalist, so she brought an interesting perspective to the whole panel because she talked about covering medical cases and using her medical expertise to find interesting stories. We also heard from Parisa Khosravi, who's from CNN, and she was in charge of managing team coverage from Atlanta and sending her teams out. And she talked a lot about security and kind of keeping her team safe. How do you organize all those people in this kind of chaos? So that was interesting as well. We got some great questions from the audience, including the subject of, should reporters be part of the story? And it sparked an interesting debate between people who said no, they should not, and others that said, why not? We are human. It's not a bad thing to be part of the story. It's good to see reactions from reporters in the field. Finally, the big issue too is, where do we go from here? It's been 3 months since the natural disaster, and it's important to keep covering the story. A lot of the panelists said that this is an important story to cover. There are so many different angles to take, including the rebuilding of the country, as well as health issues, those kinds of things. So we also talked to Jonathan Katz from the AP personally about his experience and what he went through. Check that out on rtdna.org.